Hello, my name's Tim Shoebridge. Welcome to this video. Happy New Year, happy 2022. Let's hope it's a happy 2022 for us all. The subject of this video is, slightly unsurprisingly, this little box of tricks from Dreadbox. It's the Nymphes. Now, I am painfully aware that the internet and YouTube is saturated, literally saturated with videos about this little synth right now. I just did a check before recording this little segment here, and I could find well over 40 videos on the Nymphes. Some from professional reviewers, all the usual names, and then a whole load from other people. And that is fantastic, of course, but it's also slightly scary for me because I'm trying to think, what can I do in a video that stands apart from the other ones, that gives you some information that is useful and new compared to all of those other videos. So I'm just going to do what I normally do and give you my opinions, basically. I'm not going to go through this. This is not going to be a review of this synthesizer. I'm not going to go through and tell you how it all works, explain the menu system, the interface, and stuff like that. I'm not going to do too many sound examples from it because all of those things have been done very successfully by other people so far. The way I'm going to treat this video is, let's say you and I were down a coffee shop having a cup of coffee together, and you said to me, "Hey Tim, I hear you've got the Nymphes. What's it like? Is it worth buying?" That would be the conversation I would have with you. Just tell you what I think, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. So we are down a coffee shop together. I've got my skinny flat white. You've got your coffee, and we're going to talk about this. That is what's coming up in this video. I do hope it's useful to you, informative, enjoyable, anything else. Let's get on with it. Thanks very much for watching. Right, let's talk about the first thing that comes to mind, and it is the form factor of this synth. It is so small, it's so light, it's so compact. To say that it was pocket-sized is maybe stretching it a bit, but actually I think it would fit into a large overcoat pocket. It really is very, very small. Now, I think talking about the form factor is very important because I really do believe that when Dreadbox sat down to think about designing a polysynth, out of all of the decisions that they made and the things they wanted to achieve with it, I really do believe that what they wanted to achieve was a synth that was as small as possible, as compact as possible, that was as portable as possible, so USB powered, for example, and therefore as cheap as possible for us to buy. So, you know, the best value for money you can get. And I really do think that Dreadbox have achieved all of those things brilliantly, magnificently, in fact. So when we talk about the user interface and we talk about some niggles maybe about this or that or the other, because let's face it, all designs of synthesizers, however big or small they are, they're all a bunch of compromises. When we think about the synth and we go into some of the details about it, I think we just need to bear in mind that Dreadbox wanted to give us a very small, compact, light and portable polysynth, and they have achieved that really, really well. So talking about the size of it, I'm just going to show it compared to a Typhon, which is another very small, portable and compact synth from Dreadbox. And you'll see there that they're pretty much the same size in terms of overall dimensions, but actually the Nymphes is much, much shallower. It's not as deep here, and I don't know how Dreadbox have managed to do this. I also don't know how they've managed to actually power it from USB. This is the only analog polysynth that I know of that actually is powered by USB, and it works really, really well. You don't need a massive amount of power. I don't have the specs in front of me to tell you. I've got an aging old 12-year-old MacBook, and I can very happily power this thing from that MacBook, as well as powering other things like my Arturia keystep, for example. It really does work brilliantly in terms of USB power. It's a very, very portable synth, and I didn't really ever think that I that I would see or have in front of me or even use a portable analog polysynth, but I have. It's here. It's really, really good. I'm really, really enjoying that experience. I've actually spent an awful lot of my time out and about, or certainly away from my studio here, with this thing hooked up to my notebook, working away with it, connecting it to my DAW. It works really, really well, and I will talk about that a little bit later on in the video. So in terms of form factor, it is it's not going to be for everyone. And I think, you know, with everything I mentioned about this synth, it's going to be, well, it's not for everyone. I mean, not everyone wants a pocket-sized polysynth. You know, some people want a keyboard, and then they want a full-size keyboard, and then they want 5 octaves of keyboard, right? We all are different. We all want different things. It won't be for everyone. But if you sort of like have an open mind about small, compact, and incredibly good value for money polysynth, then this is the one that you should be looking at. Right, so let's just have a little chat about the synth architecture, because on the face of it, it seems like a very basic architecture we've got going on here. There's just one oscillator per voice, for example, which when I heard about that, I was a little bit disappointed by it. That said, there are some synths that we've had over the years, just with one oscillator per voice, that sound absolutely amazing. My favorite being the Korg Poly 6. That's just got one oscillator per voice. It sounds absolutely gorgeous. The Nymphes has got the one oscillator per voice. It's got a sub oscillator as well to combine with that. But like with pretty much all Dreadbox products, they have this habit of surprising me, of putting some little hidden gems into their products. You know, they make some very, very interesting design choices. And that's one of the many reasons why I love their products, and I think that they're a fantastic company. I'll talk a bit more about that in the conclusions to this video. But in terms of the little hidden gems you'll find in the Nymphes, they are there. This is not going to disappoint you. There is more to this synth than it might, you know, initially appear. First thing I'll talk about really is modulation capabilities. So you've got 2 envelope generators, and you've got an LFO per voice. And there's not a lot you can really modulate with those. You can modulate the pitch, and you can modulate the filter cutoff, the cutoff of the low pass filter. There's a high pass filter in here as well. But that's pretty much it as far as modulation capabilities go per voice. But you've got global modulation capability. You've got an LFO number 2. It's a global LFO. And that's a bit more common than you might think in polysynths. I believe it is the Dave Smith Prophet 6. I believe that the LFO in that synth is a global LFO. It's not per voice. So we've got one of those in here. It's LFO number 2. And there are 3 other modulation sources that are global. It will respond to velocity, to monophonic aftertouch, and the mod wheel. So you have 4 modulation sources in total that are global, and with those modulation sources simultaneously you can modulate pretty much any of the parameters that you see here on the front panel, and you can modulate some parameters that you can't see here on the front panel. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So modulation capabilities are amazing with the Nymphes. You can create some incredible sounds. From a sound design perspective, it is an incredible little box of tricks. What else can I say about it? The voicing modes. I mean, it is a 6-voice polysynth, but it's actually an awful lot more than a 6-voice polysynth. You've got voicing modes with unison. You've got good old monophonic single voice if you want it. And then you've got some other voicing modes in between. You can pair up voices together and create a 3-note polysynth. And why would you do that? Because you can detune those voices and create some really big fat sounds. And you can also pair up 3 voices and have basically a duophonic synth. Again, really big fat sounds by detuning those voices. And you've got a chord mode, so you can take those voice allocations in monophonic modes if you like, and you can create chords just by playing single notes. There's an awful lot you can do with this synth that sits between polyphonic and monophonic, and as a mono synth it can sound really big and fat, even though it's just got that one oscillator, because you can detune voices in different unison modes. So it's really flexible and fairly unique, I'd say, as a polysynth in terms of the voicing modes that are there. What else do I want to mention? I've got a list over there. Oh, very briefly, I mean, both of these LFOs, they've got some advanced features. I mean, they've got a wide range of waveforms, which is really nice to see on LFOs, but they've also got parameters called delay and fade. Delay will fade in your LFO effect, and fade will fade it out. So you've got fade in and fade out of both of the LFOs. Little advanced features like that are really nice to have, and they really do extend the capabilities of the sounds that you can get out of this little box. So the Nymphes is an analog polysynth, but it does have a digital section to the audio chain, and that is it's got a digital reverb. I've noticed pretty much with most of the videos that I've watched on YouTube about the Nymphes, people are not using the reverb, they're using external effects, and I have to say I am guilty of doing exactly the same thing myself. The reverb on here, I think, to be honest, to a degree, we're all slightly spoiled by the Typhon that Dreadbox produced and the the large array of digital effects that it has, and the fact that it has a stereo output. Because you don't have that with this synth at all. You just have the one algorithm, the one reverb effect, and you get a monophonic output on the back of it. So it's a kind of a bit of a sort of step backwards, if you like, from the Typhon in terms of effects. There are no multi-effects. There is just the one. It's a reverb, which, reverb sounds great when it's stereo, and we've got a monophonic version of it here, which is a shame. The reverb itself has got a very specific character to it. I will play you a little demo once I stop talking, so you can hear it and hear what I mean. It's got a very specific character to it. It's got a kind of a slightly a metallic character to it. It sounds quite reminiscent to me of a spring tank reverb, and maybe that's what they had in mind. I mean, when Dreadbox come across and do demo videos of their products, they are kind of into sort of like industrial grungy kind of sounds. I do notice that I think they like that kind of thing. And so, they've chosen this specific reverb algorithm. They like that reverb algorithm. It's got character, and they put it in here unashamedly. That's what you get. It won't be for everyone. I mean, I've tried quite hard to use it with the music I've been producing with the synthesizer and sound examples, and it just doesn't always fit. It's quite, it's a bit too specific. And I think the biggest issue with the reverb for me is the pre-delay that there is built into that algorithm. Now, you've got a number of options for changing the reverb. There are 4 different parameters, including the mix, that you can change with the reverb, so that's nice to have. But the pre-delay is not one of the things that you can change. It's fixed, and it's what you get. And so it just doesn't fit quite a lot of the sounds, most of the sounds actually, if I'm honest, that I have been creating with this synth. So I have gone and used other effects. I'll show you a little shot of it, but I've bought recently, it was my Black Friday purchase for myself, I was spoiling myself. I got a nice discount on their darkness reverb pedal, which actually I believe is implementing some of the Sine Vibes algorithms that are in the Typhon. I'm using that pedal a lot in the music I'm creating with the Nymphes, kind of keeping it in the family if you like, but it is not the reverb that's in here. It's a bit like Marmite at the end of the day. You're either going to like that reverb sound or you're not. I'm not really very keen on spring tank reverb sounds, full stop. I mean, I'm old enough to have grown up. My first sort of electronic keyboards that I had when I was a teenager had reverb tanks in them. And it was the only way that we had to introduce reverb into our sounds. I've kind of done that to death. And when digital technology took over and gave us some gorgeous, wonderful, cavernous stereo effects, I really, I was a happy bunny at that point because I didn't have to listen to my spring reverb tank anymore. So I've kind of gone through the period in time when spring reverb tanks were all we had, and I'm happy that we now have digital effects. So I'm not too excited about the fact that we have a digital effect here, which is sounding like a spring reverb tank. It sounds like a bit of a sort of a backward step. But it is what it is. It's there if you want to use it. It's there. You can just give it a little bit of sort of like atmosphere to your sounds, because I don't like listening to dry synth sounds through my headphones, for example. If I'm doing some sound design somewhere, I like to have a little bit of ambience going on. So it's there if you want it, but it won't be a sound that is for everyone. But I'll just show you a little demonstration now of what I'm talking about, and certainly so you can hear the sort of like the pre-delay that's going on with this particular reverb. Right, let's have a little listen to the reverb. We've got 4 controls here, so that the reverb controls are accessible through the menu. So with the menu LED lit, we go to number 3, which is reverb, and then these controls here will allow me to change the size, the decay, the filter, which is like a tone control for the reverb itself, and a mix. Let's put these controls somewhere in the middle just to start off with, because I guess, with most reverbs, having those controls somewhere in the middle will give you a kind of an idea of what the reverb should sound like. So we'll just add the mix in. I've got a real sort of stabby, bassy sound going on here. No release at all on the envelope. Ends immediately. Let's hear what the reverb sounds like. But here there's a kind of a modulation going on there, sort of a metallic modulation. Very spring reverb-esque, I think. Let's whack it up to maximum. So, even maximum is not 100% wet. We can still hear the original signal there. Right, let's play around with some of these parameters. So we take the size right down and the decay right down. a lot more sort of like a room reverb. Now the filter is basically a tone control, so if we whack it up maximum, I guess we're getting the full reverb sound. And there, as we add the mix, you can hear some of the artifacts of the reverb. It's almost a little bit of echo in there, isn't there? I mean, I'm sure it's very good for some purposes, for sure. All right, let's let's whack up the size, see what happens. You can hear that sort of Doppler effect as I increase the size of it. And now let's try adding, well, increasing the decay. And yes, it will sort of resonate after a while. So it gets pretty crazy and it gets pretty huge. But there's some sort of modulation going on in there which you may or may not want. I think personally it sounds better with the filter turned down, so we're just hearing the lower frequencies. Obviously modulating this size would be fun. The thing is, you can't modulate the reverb parameters, not through the front panel at least, not using the global modulation sources. Obviously you can modulate it using MIDI CCs, but not through the front panel. Right, now let's talk about a little bit more of a gritty subject with the Nymphes, and that is its user interface. Now, when Dreadbox sort of showcased the Nymphes at a trade show before it was available for you to pre-order and buy, there was some feedback. I saw it on social media, people talking about the shift button. And talking about how I couldn't use that synth. The shift button just sort of like drives me crazy. And I think that Dreadbox really did sort of like consider very carefully that initial feedback that people gave them, because when you look at what you get in the box, I'll just show you a couple of things you get. You get your thank you for purchasing. Let's try and hold that so you can see without the reflections. Thank you for purchasing card, and on the back of it, it's got a little map of the menu system and how you use the menu system, what buttons you need to press, and what options are available. Very, very simple and clear instructions there on the menu system. But you don't just get that. You actually get this really cool, large, quick start guide. Quick start guide, there you go. Let's turn it around there. Quick start guide. The very first thing you see there is shift button, how to use it. Nice little diagram there on how to use it. And then we've got controlling the menu down the bottom there. Then on the back, we've got loading a preset, saving a preset. Lots of lovely diagrams. Very nice, very simple, straightforward to follow. And that's not all, because you've got then inside a whole load more things. Using LFO number 2, mod wheel, modulations, global modulations, the reverb, the play modes, etc. So you get this lovely quick start guide. Obviously, this is as well as a very detailed user manual, which is available for you to download on the internet. It's PDF. But I think really Dreadbox have taken on board people's feedback about the menu system and tried to sort of like show you how straightforward it is to use. Now, I've used quite a few synthesizers over the years that have got a shift button, and some of them I haven't got on with at all, I have to say. I'm not going to mention them because there's no point, but they really kind of drove me crazy with the shift button. And I think the main reason why they drove me crazy was because with those synthesizers there was an awful lot of controls on the front panel to start with, and then you've got the shift button working with some of those parameters and not other parameters, and you've got to start thinking about, oh, how do I get that parameter? Oh, it's that control there. I need the shift button, blah, 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 blah. With this one, with the Nymphes, there are so few controls on the front panel to start off with that it's really not that confusing. Basically, if you want to use these sliders to change these parameters along the bottom, then you don't use the shift button. And if you want to change these parameters along the top, you use the shift button. You can either hold it down while you move a slider, or you can double tap it to turn it on full time while you move a bunch of sliders. Yes, you're going to have to remember to turn it off again, and yes, you're going to have to remember to hold it down when you move a slider. But there really isn't a lot of a problem with using the shift button. It's not the shift button that I have a problem with this synth. But it's not all smiley faces and thumbs up for me when it comes to the user interface. There are some occasions where you get deeper into the synthesizer where things don't quite work the way that I would like them to, or I have a particular problem with. And I think the best thing for me to do is to try and demonstrate to you separately with this thing on a table with a camera over the top of it, try and demonstrate what I'm talking about. So that is what's going to come up next, where I have some issues with the user interface. Okay, so my approach to building up patches to sound design is an iterative process, and I think I'm not really alone in that, to be honest with you. I mean, what I mean by that is I'll set some controls and some parameters roughly to where I want them to be, and then I'll keep coming back to them and refining them over and over and over again. So I might set an initial waveform. I've got an idea of what that waveform is likely to sound best at. I might then set an amplitude envelope, roughly how I want it to be, just as a starting point, for example. And then I'll turn my attention to the low-pass filter. So I'll set a cutoff where I think I might want to have it, something like that to start off with. And then I'm going to want to sculpt that filter cutoff. So I'm going to start looking at the filter envelope. Now, this set of controls here is both for the filter envelope And for the amplitude envelope, that's what the amplitude envelope looks like. It's nice to see what it looks like, but I'm about to destroy that because I don't want that, I don't want that, or that, and I want that really down there for a little bit of punch, a little bit of a stab to my filter. I'm going to just apply that filter, get that sounding right, maybe adjust this a little bit more, get it about right where I want it to. Now I realize that my amplitude envelope, the release is a little bit too long, so I want to go back to that, back into the shift, to change the amplitude envelope, which is now not what these controls look like anymore. I'm going to have to rediscover where I left that release using my ears and then set it to where I think sounds best. Okay, so that's fine, but I think that the sound is a little bit too heavy. I want to apply a little bit of high pass filter. So high pass filter is with this control here with shift. This is where my low pass cutoff is. I'm going to start from scratch with my high pass filter. I just want a little bit going on there of the high pass filter. That's about right. But I want to now adjust the filter again. Low pass filter. This is no longer the position of the low pass filter. It's where the high pass filter is. So I've now got to sort of rediscover using my ears where the position is and then move it from there. I mean, at each stage where we've got a sort of a multi-use or a dual-use slider here, which they all are, let's face it, every time they're out of position, you have to kind of listen in and rediscover where the position should be and start from there. Right, so as you can hopefully see there from that example, that demonstration, you know, it's not the shift button that really is the problem. It's the fact that you have sliders in a state where they don't really, you know, match the patch that you're creating at any point in time. It's not just the fact that these are dual use sliders without the shift and with the shift, but as soon as you get into sort of like the more complex parts of the synth, you know, the more advanced features of the synth, the global modulations, then what you realize is that these sliders can actually change up to 10 different values. And I really get to the point when I'm creating a complex patch, which is what you can do with the Nymphes, that I want to have some sort of like visual feedback of what those settings are at any point in time. Having to rediscover what that cutoff is so that I can just change it a bit just slows me down and actually becomes quite frustrating. And so it's because of those reasons, as well as the fact that there are some advanced parameters that you can change with the synth that you can't change with the sliders or the menu system at all. You have to send the synth MIDI control messages. And because there are those advanced features in the synth as well, that's when I turned to finding some sort of MIDI automation solution to using the Nymphes. Now, I don't want to hijack this video by talking about my own product, but I'm going to have to just a little bit. I just want to give you a little insight into the solution that I came up with to control the Nymphes and to access its advanced hidden features. Because for me, it was kind of game-changing. At this point, I really don't need to worry about the user interface at all. I can control it all from my computer, whether it's my workstation here or whether it's my laptop. And I have got complete visual control over the patches that I'm creating. It really is a way of working that I absolutely love. And I'm finding that I'm using the Nymphes for so much of the sounds that I'm creating now. So I just want to give you a little bit of an insight as to my solution, which is a software solution for controlling the Nymphes, to give you an idea about what worked for me. As I say, I don't want to hijack this video by talking about my thing. This is a video about the Nymphes. I will do a separate video, a walkthrough video of my software editor, MIDI controller thing that I've written for the Nymphes synth. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little whistle-stop tour of the software editor, the MIDI controller that I've ended up developing for using with the Nymphes. I end up with the Nymphes here, just sitting here on the side like that. I don't need to touch the controls at all. It's now fully automated through my little software editor. Here's a screenshot of it here. It's called NympCC MIDI controller. You'll see that the layout is very, very similar to the Nymphes. except that there are far more sliders there. I've eliminated, if you like, the use of menu options or shift button to get at sliders. So these sliders along the bottom here relate to the sliders on the Nymphes if I'm not using shift, and if I am using shift to get at these parameters at the top, then I use these sliders here instead. So I can see exactly what these sliders are doing. I can see what my envelopes look like. I never need to change these other than if I want to change the envelope. I can see what my cutoff is, what the resonance is set to, what the envelope generator modulation amount for my filter is. All of these things are there. I've even split out, as you can see here, LFO1 and LFO2. They are separate. They've got their own controls rather than having to reuse the same set of controls with the menu option, and the same with the reverb. Rather than having to use menu options to get at the reverb controls, they're here so I can see exactly what's going on with my reverb as well. So visually I can see exactly what I'm doing in terms of my patch. Now obviously you could program a hardware MIDI controller, and there's a huge number to choose from. You could use a hardware MIDI controller and program it to do the same kind of things that I'm doing here. However, there are advantages to using software. What I decided to do, for example, was add my own preset capability here, so I can load and save my own presets. Now, there's very limited storage for presets on the Nymphes. You can't give them names, that you just put them in locations. That's what you do with presets. Here, obviously, I'm using my my hard drive space. I'm using folders. I've got unlimited patch storage. I can create subfolders. I can organize my presets how I like. I can give them very meaningful names. So from a sort of like patch management perspective, it's really, really nice using a software editor like this. So I've got that preset capability. I've added other things here. So you can see, for example, there's a previous and a current little LED display here. What happens is when I move one of these sliders, any slider or any knob, any control whatsoever, it will immediately show you the current value that I've set it to, and it'll also show the previously saved value, whatever the last saved value was. So I've got an awful lot of visual feedback over my patches to see exactly what I'm doing, which is what I really do appreciate having. I've added other little things like here, a logarithmic linear switch. Sometimes it's nice to just use these with a linear feedback, and sometimes it's nice to use them with logarithmic feedback. If, for example, you want to dial in really fine levels of vibrato or tremolo or something like that, it's nice to have a lot of control at the bottom end of the scale. And so that's what logarithmic allows me to do. And you can just flick between them anytime you like. You'll see there that the sliders are moving up and down to compensate, so that it doesn't matter what my setting is here, the patch still sounds exactly the same. That's something that I find really useful. I use that a lot, switching between logarithmic and linear. I've added those kind of features to this. Now, if I zoom out of the screenshot here, you'll see that my software editor is sitting inside what looks like some kind of Eurorack enclosure. It is actually inside a virtual analog, virtual Eurorack environment. And the environment that I've chosen is by Cherry Audio, and the product is called Voltage Modular. I discovered Voltage Modular a couple of months ago, and I'm blown away by how good it is, how much fun it is. It really is a huge amount of fun. If you are, if thinking about getting into Eurorack but don't really know about if it's for you, you don't want to commit yourself financially, trying it out in a virtual environment like Voltage Modular is a fantastic way to see if it's something that you will enjoy. It really is a virtual Eurorack experience. It's loads and loads of fun. The patches that you can get out and the sounds you can create are just basically limitless, let's face it. Now, I believe, I'll have to double check this, but I believe that Voltage Modular, when you download it, it is absolutely free, I think. I'll double check that. And it's only the modules that you end up using inside that environment that you end up paying for. And they're incredibly cheap. I mean, when you buy a hardware module, you buy a VCO, you just get that one VCO. And if you want another one, you have to buy another one. Here with Voltage Modular, it's virtual. when you bought a module, you can replicate it and clone it as many times as you like. You can use it all over the place, and there's however many patches that you want to create. It's really limitless from that point of view. So it's incredibly good value for money. All of the modules that I've seen for purchase are, very, very reasonably priced. They're not going to break the bank. It's a great way to get into modular without actually, stumping up the cost of hardware. So I would highly recommend it for that reason. But the reason why I've developed my software editor inside here is because Cherry Audio have done all the hard work for me. They supply Voltage Modular running on Apple Mac. They supply it running under Windows. They supply it as an add-in for your DAW. I don't have to do any of that work to figure out how I should do that. They've done it for me. And the other great thing is that I can extend my software editor here and give it semi-modular capabilities, if you like. I can actually give the Nymphes, in a virtual way, semi-modular capabilities. Let me just very, very quickly show you something I developed for it. It's called Nymph CV. Let me drop it down there so you can see it. There it is. It's a little add-on for my software editor MIDI controller. The way that I hook it up is I just drag a cable out of it, plug it into it there, and now it's like a breakout box. It's like a patch bay for all of these controls over here. You'll see here along the bottom: wave, level, sub, noise, LFO1, cutoff, resonance, EG, ADSR, etc. And you'll see the exact same labels here: wave, level, sub, noise, LFO1, cutoff, resonance, EG, and then we've got the filter envelope, ADSR, etc. So you can follow these labels along here and then along here, and you'll see them all here laid out. And I've even added the reverb controls as well, which you can't modulate using the global mod matrix, but you can using my little patch bay here. Right, so I think now is the time to wrap up this particular video, come up with some conclusions, or try and summarize what I think about this little synth here. I do absolutely think it is amazing. I think that's probably clear from the video so far. Let's just talk about Dreadbox to start off with, the company itself. One of the main reasons why I like Dreadbox and why they are one of my most favorite synth manufacturers is that they dare to follow their own path. They are not scared of taking risks. They produce products that aren't mainstream products. They're products that they want to produce. They innovate in very interesting ways. You know, they don't just keep coming up with variations on the same theme all the time, which some manufacturers do. You know, this Nymphes is not going to be for everybody. The form factor isn't going to be for everybody. Not everyone wants a small little synth like this. The fact that it's USB powered isn't going to be for everybody. Not everyone wants that kind of power options. Not everyone is going to want a monophonic audio output. Not everyone is going to enjoy using this interface here. Not everyone is going to want to have to use MIDI automation in order to access some of the hidden parameters inside the synth. And not everyone is going to enjoy the digital reverb that's on board either. You know, there's many reasons why this is not a mainstream commercial product. It is a very niche product. It's a specific product. It's a product that Dreadbox had very specific design goals about. It's full of character. The sound is full of character. And although it's not for everybody, for everyone else that it is for, I do think it's a little bit of a masterpiece of a product, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I was blown away by the Typhon, and I've been blown away by the Nymphes. Now, the one thing I'm not sure about is how much I would be blown away by it if I hadn't ended up coming up with my own MIDI automation solution for accessing it and changing parameters and saving patches and everything else. I don't know how positive I would be about it if my only way of using it was sit it down on a desktop and use the user interface like this. So that's something I can't really comment about, but what I can say is that for me it has been a game changer to be able to produce a piece of software, to be able to visualize my presets, my patches, to help me so much with you know, sound design with this synth. Really, it's allowed me to sort of like unlock this synth's full potential, and it's made me very, very happy. This really is becoming quite a, you know, a fundamental piece of my sort of my synthesized armory here. And it's quite surprised me, to be honest with you, because I am glued to my synthesizer. I'm glued to my computer all the time because that's where my door is. I record everything through my door. And so, you know, I'm very used to having a computer keyboard and a mouse and using my door. But because of that, I like to use physical hardware. As you can no doubt tell from my other videos, I do like hardware synths. So it's a bit of a sort of like a complete sort of change for me to be using a software editor, which let's face it, it's like using a software synthesizer plugin. And I'm actually quite enjoying it, to be honest with you. Well, actually, I'm more than enjoying it. I'm really, really enjoying it. And not just in front of my main workstation here in my studio, but I've really enjoyed hooking up the Nymphes, powering it via USB with my, as I say, aging old 12-year-old MacBook, running my DAW on my MacBook, being able to create music, record music, come up with ideas wherever I happen to be. It's a really interesting and usable portable solution. I never really thought I'd ever have in my hands a 6-voice analog polysynth that was completely portable, that I could take anywhere and make music with. And that's what the Nymphes is, and that's what it's about. And let's just not forget the price. It's in this country, in UK, it's £450, around that kind of price bracket, £450. It's just insanely good value for money. And it's so surprising to come from Dreadbox. Dreadbox are a very small, niche, boutique company. They don't have the economies of scale that some of the other manufacturers have. You know, you expect to pay a little bit of a premium for a Dreadbox product. And here, they've absolutely come up with the most incredible value for money polysynth, analog polysynth that I've ever seen. And hats off to them for doing so. It's a really an incredible achievement that Dreadbox have come up with. That's it. That's what I wanted to say about the Nymphes. I will do a separate video about my software editor, because I will be making that available for you if you want it. That will, as I say, come in a separate video. Until then, as always, thank you very, very much for watching.